Hi everyone, today our guest is tech entrepreneur Tural Badirkhanli. Hi Tural.
Hi Emin.
I want to introduce you to our audience. Tural is a tech entrepreneur who was born in Azerbaijan but went to study then to US, studied at MIT and created then after that Namo Media, managed to sell this company for $50 million to Twitter. Then worked for some time also for Twitter and since 2 years founded a new company, Solidshape, and we will talk about it later. Tural, is this correct that you are sitting right now in the office which belonged to Mark Zuckerberg, one of his first offices in Palo Alto?
Yeah, that's true. That's funny. Facebook, when they moved to the Silicon Valley, their offices were in Palo Alto, in downtown Palo Alto. And this room that I was sitting in, it was one of their offices at that time. So it's funny, yeah.
You went to US to study and then create this company then you sold to Twitter. Do you think you could do that in Azerbaijan? Is it necessary for tech entrepreneur, to go to study in US and to start a company there? I mean, would it be possible to create a company which would have, which you could sell for $50 million by staying in Azerbaijan? Or you had to go to US to do it?
I think you have to go to US. Maybe not necessarily in the US, but US is the land of the people who, do crazy things. I think you have to go to US. I don't think you necessarily have to study in US. But I think you have to come here at least at this moment in our history. I think that's important. I mean, Azerbaijan, if you think about it, is a very small country, has small economy, it has very select industries that that work. So it's very limited in many ways. So I think it would be much harder. I would say it's probably not possible.
Still living in US and working in US, it doesn't mean that many people succeed. So most startups fail, right? And talking about failure, you didn't. You did manage to create that company. You did manage to sell to Twitter. What is your business model? How did you manage to create value that, others so often fail to create? So what was your business model in Namo Media? Why it succeeded?
Yeah, Namo Media was a platform that helped other applications to make money. And we started a company in 2013 where there were a lot of apps created. A lot of people wanted to build apps. But they didn't know how to monetize it, how to make money. And there's a story about gold rush times, about California, about people in gold rush times where a lot of people would go out and seek gold. They would, try to find gold. But the people who made the most money and people who were the most successful were not the people looking for gold, but they were the people who served people who looked for gold. So we kind of followed that idea. We served the people who build apps, and we wanted to help them make money. We wanted to help them, build a business model, and that was our business model. So I think, we did something that other people needed, and I think that's an essence of creating value.
So you founded 2 years ago another company called Solidshape. Tell us more about it. What's the business idea behind it? And where are you now with that? It's
been about a year and a half, and it's a different industry. It's building materials. It's a construction industry. It's a $1 trillion industry just in US, but it's being run, using the tools that were built 30, 40, 50 years ago. It's very old school industry. Our mission is to build technology to transform this industry, to make buying of building materials, a lot more reliable and a lot easier process. So I like to compare this to Airbnb. If before Airbnb, if you wanted to rent an apartment for a short period of time, it would be extremely hard, because you'd probably have to go Craigslist, or you have to call your friends to find you something. You'd have to go see the place. You would have to make sure it's a secure neighborhood. Now Airbnb makes it extremely easy, and you click a button and it's done. Now we want to do the same thing to building materials. Right now, buying, if you're a contractor, if you're a designer, if you're a builder, you're trying to build something, it's extremely difficult. You have to deal with dozens of vendors, and it's a lot of headache. We want to reduce that to a simple click, where you can click and it's going to be there on time when you need it. So that's our mission. It's very, very interesting. It's a huge, massive industry, very interesting people. We have an amazing team in here. So
very, very challenging indeed. If it's not a secret, could you tell us how many people work for you now? Do you hire people in Azerbaijan? And if yes, how many have you or you plan to hire for this work?
We have around, it's actually interesting. We have around like 18 to 20 people in Azerbaijan. They are actually doing a lot of data quality and product quality work for us. And outside of Azerbaijan, we're about 13 people. That includes a lot of them are engineers.
Yeah.
And we have some sales people, we have some operations people.
Let me ask you this question then. Why you hired software engineers, if I understand correctly, in Azerbaijan? Why not in Ukraine, Belarus, Kazakhstan, US, or other parts of the world? Why did you hire about 20 people in Azerbaijan?
Actually, people in Azerbaijan are more like data quality. So they are like data quality. They ensure data quality. They do checks and balances for us, not engineers. So engineering team is based in US. It's based in Canada, and we have some engineers in Turkey.
Yeah. So, but you still hire people in Azerbaijan. Is this makes economically more sense? Is this talented? Is this is this cheaper? Like what's?
It was two things. Number one, it was, I think for me, it was something that I felt comfortable with. Knowing the culture, knowing the people. When you're building a company, you want to have as many reliable partners as you can get, and we could get that in Azerbaijan, and we were, because we know the culture, we know the people. That's number one. Number two, it was a lot more affordable. So if we wanted to do it somewhere else, it would be harder to do it. I think compared to maybe India or other places, I think we're also getting much better quality people.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it as well. I think we're having very, very smart people in Azerbaijan. So
what is missing in Azerbaijan for you if you continue, if this business will grow and you will need to hire maybe even more people? What is missing? So if that would be in Azerbaijan, you could hire, for example, instead of 20, 100, 1,000, while your company, if and when it would grow. What would you say that, the government or the business community or in Azerbaijan should start to exist or be developed or be in place so you could start hiring more people? So a lot of entrepreneurs like you from Azerbaijan or not from Azerbaijan originally in Europe or in US could start looking at coming and hiring people in Azerbaijan as well. What is that missing thing, or what would you suggest to add? What ingredients needed for this to become kind of a global trend or regional trend?
Number one is talent. It's extremely hard to find the right talent. So it would be very difficult to hire software engineers, for example, in Azerbaijan, because I think that talent is very scarce. And people who are there, they just don't, a lot of times they just don't have the skills and they don't have the experiences that's necessary to sort of integrate with the team, you know. Simple things, for example, you know, collaborating in a team environment, you know. It's a little easier, for example, if you want to compare to Turkey. Turkey has many tech companies, successful tech companies, you know. I mean, they're much smaller compared to US, but they're very successful tech companies, like Trendyol, for example. I think a lot of people are using it even in Azerbaijan. And, you know, that brings culture, that brings know-how, that breeds talent. Our high school education is good, but university is not good in Azerbaijan, unfortunately. And I think part of it is because there is no industry in Azerbaijan. So someone who goes to school doesn't know what they're gonna do after graduating. It's a free market. Think about it as a free market. It's supply and a demand. So if there is no demand for talent, then there will be no talent. You know, you can bring all the books, you can bring all the knowledge, but if there is no demand for that talent, then it's very difficult to build the supply.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about industry and how it can be created and what government or governments can do about it. There was a quite successful, there are some successful cases. So some governments take this, you know, very seriously, and they try to create a hub. You know, they, like, for example, Chile. About 10 years ago, the government in Chile decided that they want to turn Chile into tech hub in Latin America. And so there was a program, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Startup Chile, and it is funded by the government. So they are giving now about $27,000 to each, basically everyone who wants to start a startup. They want to attract the talents from all over the world, entrepreneurs, tech people. They give them money. If they think the idea is worth it of trying and even failing, then they give that grant. And by that they aim, I'm not sure they have achieved it or not, but they are aiming at creating a company that will have 1 billion worth, you know, coming out of these startups. Australia and Puerto Rico, for example, copying, pasting now that experience. And what it does, it helps to create community, right? And their condition is that the entrepreneurs should come and work from Chile. So they want to, so the people are hired there. So there is a community, vibrant, this, you know, community of, you know, techie people and entrepreneurs who are in that industry. So do you think, is this a good example for Azerbaijan, or there are maybe other examples that you think that the government in Azerbaijan could study and see if, you know, they could use that experience?
It's not a sprint. I think it's hard to do something overnight, you know?
Yes, of course.
I think, you know, like even things that happened in Silicon Valley, they didn't happen overnight, you know? It took decades. Apple was started when, like 1970s, right? Microsoft was started in 1970s, and they kind of evolved. You know, there were not as many companies at the time, but now then it sort of formed that ecosystem. Yes. And I think we should look at it. I think you know, Azerbaijan should look at it as a marathon where, you know, they're investing in the next 5-10 years. I think government can put a fuel into this and empower more people to do this, and that will be extremely powerful. And what that will do is that will close the loop between education and industry. Like, for example, MIT receives $2 to $3 billion every year It's an institution. It's a college. It's a research institute, but it receives $2 to $3 billion every year from the industry.
As donation or as
investment,
as
investment into research, into R&D, into research and development. So what that does is it creates a closed loop between industry and university and education system.
Yes.
So that's why MIT can be a cutting edge school where they are doing the cutting edge technologies. They're working on cutting edge technologies, and people and students who go to MIT, as an example, are exposed to those things. So they see they can do cutting edge work. They can create things. They see this because it's closely connected with the industry. So I think that's important in an education system, to close the loop from education to industry. I remember in 2005, I was in college, and I had my friends go to Israel to do internship with Google in Israel. So I think that's crazy, because 2005, Google went public 2004. Google was started in 1999. So 6 years out, Google had an office in Tel Aviv. Microsoft has an office in Tel Aviv. Many tech companies have. So that means that I think government first, they built the environments and they welcomed tech companies to come there and establish their presence. And this was a R&D presence, a research development presence. So I think it's very important to bring know-how. I think this is very, very essential. So because if you just close down and you sort of go in your own bubble and you try to create a startup, you try to create a tech environment, that's going to be extremely hard, and it's going to be probably it's going to be a failure, because you're trying to reinvent the wheel and you're trying to recreate something that has already been done, versus attracting the people and attracting the talent to come and help you and bring you the know-how, and then build from there. So I think that's very important. I think there are some efforts that going on in Azerbaijan. I think maybe a few months ago, I met some people who are traveling from Azerbaijan, and they came here in San Francisco. They were trying to make deals with incubator, I think like 500 startups.
Yeah.
To bring them to Azerbaijan. I think that's a good initiative. I think that's very, very good initiative. But I think if we want to be successful and if we're serious about it, then we have to put our best people to work. And we have to increase those efforts 10 times. It feels like we're sort of in an amateur stage right now. We're sort of playing around a little bit. But I think it would be important to bring the know-how, bring the people who are experts in this area, give them presence in Azerbaijan and engage them. And I think it's hard to say exactly how to do it, because I think it's also different for every country, because every country, I believe, should use their own strength to their advantage. So I think it's going to manifest differently for every country. So, and I think it's going to be, it's hard to predict exactly how it should shape, but it will happen if we can create the right environment and we can attract the right people to come there and give them incentives to make this successful.
Different countries approached it differently. So Estonia went, they did this digital revolution and radically digitalized everything. And some even, companies, Turkish companies or other companies now, they register in Estonia and then start working in their own countries as Estonian company. So that was a big success. I know that Lithuania, they found their niche in fintech, in digital banking. So they have a special conditions for those companies who want to work in that area. You can basically be free of taxes for half a year, 1 year. It can be prolonged to 2 years, maybe even more. So they create special conditions. This is what Ireland did at some point, that they had such low taxes that they attracted a lot of companies to Ireland. So knowing these global trends and being tech entrepreneur yourself, what would you advise the government? I mean, those people in government who decide about the things, what niche could Azerbaijan actually pick up? Because, you know, Azerbaijan, for example, is not as big as China, so it cannot just try and fail, you know, in all areas probably. And government doesn't have resources to, you know, support every area. But do you think, you know, if you would be, let's say, if you would be hired as a advisor, you know, by the government of Azerbaijan, what would be your advice? What would be your approach in finding out what would be that niche for Azerbaijan where government could chip in and step in and support that, like in some Southeast Asian countries it was done?
I think the essence of it would start with attracting people from USA, attracting people from maybe Middle East to come and establish their presence of some shape or form. So there are subcomponents to creating a tech environment. One of those subcomponents is, for example, is investments. Another subcomponent is the know-how and the people. So you know, the reason Silicon Valley is called, you know, it's Silicon Valley is not because there are these buildings and, you know, you have Silicon Valley written on them, you know. It's because of the people. It's because of the knowledge. It's because of the know-how. So I think it would have to bring in those people or some of those people and incentivize them to establish their presence in Azerbaijan in some shape or form. I think, and then would have to focus on our strength. I think Azerbaijan is, you know, historically has been very progressive and has been a hub for a lot of, you know, in the region, you know, because we are, you know, there are many nationalities living in Azerbaijan. So I think it could be interesting as a hub for people from Iran, for example, from people from Turkey, from Russia, from, you know, like Turkic countries. So I think we have our strength that, you know, help us stand out. But I think it's hard to say exactly what kind of, you know, edge or what kind of thing we should build. You know, or what kind of thing we should what kind of thing is going to be.
But what about method? Because, you know, I try to imagine, let's say, you know, government officials, they sit and they decide about how to develop tech, you know, industry. Like, it's hard to imagine that government officials would know how to do that, you know, like it's, in a way, as you said, they should be tech entrepreneurs, they should be software engineers, talents attracted to Azerbaijan, and there are ways to do it. And this, you know, this is known, you know, actually tech entrepreneurs or software engineers, they might know much better, you know, what they need, and then there needs to be communication somehow, you know, communication between these people who are doing it abroad or in Azerbaijan, and then the government. And I don't know, I'm just asking you, how do you think this, because you are right, nobody knows it for sure how to do it, but what kind of communication, what kind of dialogue or process should be created, so, and who should participate in this, so we can find out and government can find out and hopefully, you know, implement such a policy?
Great question. And I think that is a methodology. I think if you want to create a hub, you bring the people, the entrepreneurs, the people who have created companies before, who have been successful before, and then you ask them, what do you need? And then giving, and then trying to understand what it is that you can give them that they need. So I think I think creating this is a kind of a startup on its own, which is, you want to create something other people need. So I think gathering those people, attracting those people, giving those people presence, and then understanding their needs and giving them what they would need to be successful in Azerbaijan, I think that's the essence. I think that's where it would start.
Let's say the government wants to develop tech industry. Do you think, is there such a practice around the world where the government just, says, okay, the entire tech industry or some part of it, niche, you don't have to pay taxes for it? Is this a good policy? Have other countries been doing this? Would it help? Would it attract these entrepreneurs and investors? Or it wouldn't work, or it's not realistic and government needs to tax companies because otherwise government will be out of money?
No, absolutely. I think that's a good idea. I mean, that's a good model. I don't know if that would be the only thing that, I don't know if it's like a game changer for a lot of companies. I think it's a bonus. I think it's a perk, and I think it's a nice perk to attract companies and to attract entrepreneurs. Another thing, for example, can be talent. Again, when you're starting a company, when you're building something, it's extremely important to have the right talent. And I'm just coming from my own needs at this point. So if I were there, if I asked, if they asked me, what you would need, is I would need like and I think this is true for many, many entrepreneurs, is number one, help find talent, but number two, help train talent in various ways. This can be, various, trainings or courses or, things that will help, the workforce in Azerbaijan to get to the level where they can participate with these companies, where they can work for these companies and produce value to these companies.
Where do you stand in terms of, so do you think that government should intervene, regulate, like for this industry to come into existence and develop in Azerbaijan? Or do you think are you more supporter of government should just do nothing, like doing nothing, not intervention is good policy? It's very fascinating experience in Turkey, in gaming industry. Turkish companies have been very successful in gaming industry, in global gaming industry. And it's interesting how, according to my knowledge, the Turkish government didn't do anything there. So in one of the reasons why things went so well, it's just they didn't do anything. So what do you think for Azerbaijan? Would it be the right approach, or you think the government should more shape this development?
Well, I think government should first get out of the way. I think government should at least not try to interrupt the work, the activities, and just try to get out of the way, because I think a lot of times that may happen, that may happen for various reasons, but that may happen. So I think that's probably number one. Number two, I think rather than trying to shape, if they want to do something about it, rather than trying to shape, I think government should listen to people who are doing this. And they should go ask them, what do you need? How can we help you? And then go and try to do those things that's gonna help those people.
I wanted to ask you a question. I think many people will be interested, since you have done it successfully, and many people would be interested. How can Azerbaijan or other startups, but let's talk about Azerbaijan, can Azerbaijani startups attract American investors? How can they do that? And pre-seed level, pre-seed phase, seed phase, like how is it possible? Can it be done?
Very hard.
Very hard.
Very hard to attract American investor. Very hard. For that, you would have to be in America.
Yes.
Your company would have to be in America, or your company will have to serve a much bigger market. So two ways you can do that. If you're in America, America is a very big market. Number two, if you're a startup, then you would have to establish yourself. And so you have to position yourself as someone who is serving the world, the rest of the world in some shape or form. I think if that happens, I think that's possible. I think investors here are trying to invest in other countries like Australia, for example, startups in other countries. I wouldn't say they're investing in other countries, but they are investing in startups in other countries. But it should be the global market. I think that's important.
I think many people who are building companies, they are very often interested in exit story, how you exit. Can you tell us your case with Namo Media? How was this flirting with investors started? How you did it with Namo Media? So
exit is how you sell your company. So right. So is how do you it could be a sell, it could be you could go IPO, and in our case it was very natural, and I think it has to happen naturally. We were partners with Twitter, but we kind of bothered them because we were trying to take their clients away from them, and that rose their attention. They were like, okay, like now ESPN is considering these guys as a startup versus Twitter, and then we have other clients where you grab their attention by bugging them in the sense so you have to create a value that's so good that Twitter's Twitter's customers and clients would be interested in your product versus Twitter's product. So I think that was one of the things, and the other thing is we had a good relationship with Twitter. We were partnering with them in some other areas. This was we were creating something very new at the time, and a lot of the brick and mortar was not present at the time. So we were building a lot of the infrastructure to enable run native advertising at scale. We were partnering, but at the same time there was tension. So it kind of happened naturally. But there are many ways.
Yeah. Let's go back for a moment to again, so to create a company, you also need money, and so there is a model. Let's say when you need, imagine you need $1 million to start a company, and you found American investor or any investor, which is giving you $500,000, and then the government of Azerbaijan would match it also with $500,000. So, or vice versa. The government says, look, if you find an investor, $500,000 investor, we give you also $500,000. Is this a good model? Is this, would you say that, government in Azerbaijan can do this and it can work, and it would be a good practice, and it would help to create some ingredients that are needed to create and develop tech industry in Azerbaijan?
I think for sure that would be helpful. I think that could be helpful.
How it should be done, that so for government and for business, so to avoid some mistakes, are there some dangers, problems that need to be taken care of and avoided?
I think if you're doing it as, if you're a government, then you probably want to say, hey, these are my white list of investors. So if you can go and sell it to them, then I'll co-invest with them. And I think that would probably be a smart decision on the side of the government, because they would be co-investing. They're using the know-how of those investors to make a good use of their money. So I think that would probably be a smart way to do it.
Can you describe a company, tech company in 10 years? And can you also tell me how you see a tech businessman in 10 years? And I'm asking this because it's interesting. I think it's interesting and important for everyone who is interested in this topic in Azerbaijan to understand where the global trend goes, so which would help again to find out the ways to develop this industry. So how do you see the tech company in 10 years? How do you see tech entrepreneur? Like, how will they look like? What they will do?
It's hard to say, honestly, very hard to say. I mean,
in your imagination,
things are changing so fast, and I think we're kind of co-creating it. You know, we're kind of co-creating, you know, what it's going to look like in 10 years. I mean, so many things changed over the last year, even, and I think that pushed the limits, and it forced a lot of the change. So, for example, you know, there was a trend to build and run remote teams, but you know, over the last year, it was more like you know, a necessary thing to do rather than an option, because you know, you couldn't be close together physically. So I think that's probably gonna, you know, it's probably here to stay. I think that's gonna be here to stay. So, and I think a lot of tech companies, and we see this today, where a lot of tech companies have international offices, they have distributed offices, they have distributed teams all over the world, and a lot of tech companies here in US, based in US, have, you know, offices in Middle East, like not just Middle East, like Europe. For example, IBM has a big team in, I think they have a team in Turkey, I think they have a team in Belarus, and they are hiring those people. And they started this trend before, but I think it's probably you know, they probably took it to next level with you know, everything that happened. So I think companies are probably going to be a lot more global in terms of their workforce and their presence. I think there are going to be a lot more opportunities than what we see today. I think the limiting factor for a startup, or you know, the reason there are not so many startups right now is not because there are few, you know, not as many ideas, is because there are not as many people to execute them. So I think the limiting factor is the people. It's not the ideas. It's not like there are not enough good ideas. There are, but you know, people who execute them is, you know, don't have enough people. So I think we're going to have a lot more people who are, you know, going to you know, try to start new companies, who are going to pursue new ideas and breakthrough ideas. So I think it's going to grow. It's going to be a lot of people trying to, you know, build things, build companies, and also the infrastructure. I think we're going to have more solid infrastructure that allows these people to be successful. So I'll give you an example. Like 10 years ago, maybe not 10 years ago, but maybe 15 years ago, if you were a tech startup and if you wanted to build a web service, you would have to actually physically get your computers. You would have to put them in a data center. You know, you would have to do all of that work, and then you would sort of set up your computers and to run your servers, to run your code. Now we don't do that. Now you click a button, you go to Amazon Web Services or Google Web Services, and you use a computing power just like a service. So that infrastructure allowed, you know, it took away so much friction that people, entrepreneurs, could focus on their ideas. They could focus on innovation. Rather than, you know, doing the brick and mortar basic infrastructure. So I think there's going to be a lot more infrastructure available to you know, entrepreneurs, to companies. It's just going to be more infrastructure just available. So I think so people could focus on their ideas.
Tural, I hope some parts of that infrastructure will be built also in Azerbaijan. I hope that many more startups and companies will come from Azerbaijan in the future. Thank you very much for your time. We had a great time. Thank you for answering all of my questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Emin.